This is
Chat the Great.
There's a film that came out around, I saw it around the late 80s, maybe 89. It's called The Killing Fields. It's by David Lean. It's about Pol Pot's regime in Cambodia, Kampuchea as it was called then, beginning with a K, Kampuchea. And so me and my mate watched this video, and the week later, the chief field researcher for Oxfam in Kampuchea was coming to their town hall to do a sort of slideshow. So we thought we'll go along to watch it, and we were the only young people there. There was about 6 people, and it was put on by this local charity group, and it was, you know, the vicar's wife and some you know, middle-aged housewives, sort of do-gooders.
Yeah.
And they were fundraisers. They used to do raffles and, you know, cake sales and whatever else.
Yeah.
And they asked us, would we like to get involved with some fundraising for them, because they wanted to build a well in this village in Kampuchea. So we said, yeah, we'll think about what we can do. And my mate Rob, who was there with, he knew that Robert Plant from Led Zeppelin lived in Monmouth.
Yeah.
We were in Hereford at the time, so we thought, let's get Robert Plant to do a gig. You know, can't be that difficult, can it? So we were both working in this factory at the time on shifts. So one morning when we finished out for the week on a Friday morning, we went for some breakfast, and then we couldn't drive or anything, so we hitched to Monmouth. It's about 15-18 miles away.
Yeah.
And we thought, right, we know that he lives near here. Let's go to the pubs. Let's just go around the pubs. Someone will know someone that knows him, okay?
Yeah.
And maybe the second pub we went to, you know, literally we're turning up at 11 o'clock on a Friday morning saying, we're looking for Robert Plant, do you know where he might live? And someone says, oh, his bass player lives down the way. He's, you know, Paul, he lives in the house next to this pub. So literally we go down the road and we knock on the door, and this sort of slightly disheveled guy opens up the door, and who looks a little bit like Keith Richards, and he's Paul Martinez, who was a bass player, and he was in Robert Plant's band.
Whoa.
And you know, he played with Led Zeppelin at Live Aid, and anyway, he's a really cool fella. So he invited us in, and we had a cup of tea and whatever else. And we told him what we wanted to do. We wanted to raise money to build this well. So he just told us where Robert Plant lived.
Oh my God.
So he had this little mini mansion outside of Monmouth, in a place called Trellick. There's a really cool recording studio in Monmouth called Rockfield Studios.
Yes, iconic. Yeah.
Loads of bands have played there, and so I think Robert Plant had basically bought a house locally because he liked recording, you know, in Rockfield, and you know, he had a lot of session musicians that were his band members that lived around there. So Paul was one, another guy called Robbie Blunt. Anyway, so we had enough money to get a taxi out of Monmouth, you know, up into the hills in Trellick to get to the end of this drive. So the taxi drops us off, and we knew we were going to have to walk back because we didn't have any money to get us back. With no mobile phones in those days for us. So we walked down this kind of, you know, little, you know, lovely lane, and there's a weird sculptures in the grounds and trees, and there's this little mansion at the end of the thing, and there was no one there. There was nobody in. So, but we knew where he lived now.
Yeah.
So we just kept going back every Friday or Saturday morning.
That's amazing.
For about 6 weeks, we just kept going. You know, we'd get friends to give us a lift and wait for us, because we couldn't drive. And
But when this happened, like, how old were you? Like 17, 19?
22.
22.
22. 21, 22. Anyway, so we went there, and one day we saw his gardener, and they said, oh, they're away, they're not back for another couple of weeks. And we went a couple of weeks later, and we met his girlfriend, and she said, oh, he's away, he's doing some, you know, he's in Italy doing some shows, but he'll be back next week. So we went back the next week and knocked on the door, and Robert Plant
There he was.
opened the door, and he let us in, and we sort of sat in he had a big sort of farmhouse kitchen, and he made, you know, we had tea and toast with him. And we said we wanted to do this gig. And at the time, we wanted to do it in Hereford, where we lived, Hereford Leisure Centre. But it was pretty big, 2,500 people or something. And he said, I think that might be a bit big for you guys if you've not done a gig before. So he said he would do it in Monmouth Leisure Centre, which was about 500 or 600 people. So he said, right, just, you've dealt with Paul, my bass player, just deal with him, organise it all through him. And, we just agreed a date. And he says, I'll turn up. He says, but you're not allowed to mention my name on any of the advertising. So I made some really shitty posters up.
Yeah.
It was called Concert for Campeche, right? Well, I used the K, so it was concert with a K.
Oh, yeah. Like
Did it with
it.
a letter set thing. It was really shitty. I wish I still had the poster.
Yeah, amazing.
Whoa.
But anyway, we went around Monmouth putting the posters in places and, telling everybody, oh, by the way, this is Robert Plant. But just, tell everybody so that they know it's Robert Plant. So anyway, we did the gig, sold it out. It was a really good, it was a good fun thing to do. We raised about 1,500 quid.
Wow.
Enough money to build this well. And I went for a drink with Paul the day after the gig. And he just said, you're really good at this. You should be a manager or a promoter or something. And that's how I started. I just took that spur and that endorsement, I guess.
That's incredible.
So then I tried to become a promoter.
What you did, I call it like a Tony Montana strategy. You know what I mean? Because what you did was amazing. So sometimes you need the Tony Montana strategy. Tony Montana, you need it. But it's very hard to put it in practice, to be honest, because you're always like scared. You know what I mean? What are you going to say? What are you going to do? What are you going to know? If you're going to offend someone?
What's the worst thing that anyone can say? You can knock on someone's door.
Right.
The worst thing they can say is bugger off, isn't it?
It's very true.
Yeah.
Or the worst thing someone can say is, I don't like your music or whatever else. That's the worst thing they can say. But unless you try, you're never going to get anywhere, are you? So yeah. I had no reference point of being a promoter, and I'd never met anyone that was famous before, so I didn't have any preconceptions about what it might be like. I wasn't fazed by it. People are just people, aren't they? Whether they're singers in rock and roll bands or journalists or promoters or milkmen or whatever, people are just people. So I'm a great believer in just giving stuff a go.